During family game night, they slipped in a card that said, "You're adopted and unwanted," and laughed, then admitted I was from an affair and only kept for benefits. So I emailed the man they feared most, and what he did shattered their whole lie. It was supposed to be a stupid, cozy family game night. Pizza boxes, laughter, the old deck of truth or dare, cards my sister loved to rig for her advantage. I didn't even want to play. But mom guilt-tripped me, saying, "Come on, sweetie, family time." I should have known better. We went around the table pulling cards. Silly dares, embarrassing confessions, the usual. Then, when it was my turn, my brother handed me the deck with this fake grin. "Pick carefully," he said. I drew a card. It looked normal, except someone had written something in different handwriting. It said, "You're adopted and unwanted." Everyone burst out laughing. My sister clapped her hands, my stepdad almost choked on his beer. And Mom, she just smirked. "Oops," she said, tilting her head like it was some dark joke. "Guess the truth's out." I laughed nervously, waiting for the punchline that never came. My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" I asked. Mom shrugged. "Well, since we're all being honest tonight," she leaned back, almost proud. "You were a surprise. Your father wasn't my husband when you were born." The room went silent for a second, except for my sister's giggle. "So what you're saying I'm adopted?" I asked. "More like we took you in," my stepdad said. "We didn't have much of a choice." Then Mom added, still with that awful smirk, "We got a few benefits for it. You were worth something, at least." The air left my lungs. I felt like I was falling through the floor. When I started crying, my brother muttered, "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic." My sister laughed harder. "We should have left you where we found you," she said, and they all cracked up like it was the funniest thing in the world. I ran to the bathroom, slammed the door, and locked it. I sat on the cold tile, shaking, trying to catch my breath while they joked outside the door, telling me to lighten up. I didn't recognize a single voice in that house anymore. That's when I remembered something, a name I'd seen on an old letter years ago, hidden in one of Mom's drawers. I was maybe 12 when I found it, and she'd snatched it away, furious. It had been signed by someone named Eli R. And she'd screamed at me that I was never to mention that name again. My hands were still trembling, but I pulled out my phone and typed out an email. Subject line, "I think you might be my father." I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. 2 minutes later, he replied. And what he said made me stop breathing entirely. He already knew who I was. Eli's email was short but heavy. "I've been waiting for this message for years. I'm so sorry for what they did. Please don't reply until you're alone and safe." I read it over and over, trying to process it. Waiting for this message? What did that even mean? How did he know who I was? When I came out of the bathroom later that night, the family was already pretending nothing had happened. My stepdad was watching TV, my sister was scrolling through her phone, and Mom gave me this fake smile like I was a little kid throwing a tantrum. "You done crying?" she asked. "Don't make everything about you, okay? We were just joking." I went straight to my room without answering. I locked the door again, this time quietly. That's when I started digging through my memory, every weird comment, every strange silence, every time Mom flinched at the mention of old friends. When I was little, I always thought she was just distant. But now, looking back, she wasn't distant, she was guilty. There had been little clues all along. I remembered once, when I was 8, I brought home a Father's Day card from school. We were supposed to make one for our dads. I asked Mom what to write on mine, and she'd said, "Don't bother, your dad's not around." When I pushed, she'd snapped, "He doesn't matter." And then there was the time my stepdad got drunk during a barbecue and called me a mistake that kept costing him. I'd thought he meant money. Now I realized it was literal. They'd always treated me like the outsider, the helper, the tag-along, the one who never really fit in. Family photos where I was half cut off at the edge. Gifts that were forgotten. Jokes about how I didn't look like anyone else. And now I knew why. I replied to Eli later that night, whispering so no one would hear me typing. I asked him what he meant, what he was sorry for. His response came within minutes. "They told me you died." My heart stopped. He said Mom and my stepdad had told him I was stillborn, that he'd tried to see me in the hospital, but security kept him out. He'd even tried hiring a lawyer, but by the time he got close, they'd moved out of state. He said he'd spent years searching. That he sent letters, emails, even showed up once at our old house. But Mom told the neighbors he was a stalker. And when she finally got him to stop, It wasn't because he gave up. It was because she'd sent him a photo of a baby's grave. My grave. That was the night I stopped calling her mom. And for the first time in my life, I realized I had someone out there who actually wanted me, and someone under this roof who had done something so dark, so deliberate, that I couldn't even look at her without shaking. Eli told me he lived in Portland now, that he wanted to see me in person, but we had to be careful. Because if my mom found out we were talking, he said she'd make sure it ended the same way it almost did before. That phrase haunted me. Almost did before. I didn't understand what he meant, but I was about to. After that night, I couldn't look at her the same. Every time Mom smiled, I saw something rotten underneath. Every good morning felt like a lie. I kept emailing Eli in secret. He was careful, no phone calls, no social media. He told me not to use the home Wi-Fi. He said Mom still had people watching his old accounts. He wasn't paranoid. He was cautious. Over the next week, he told me more about how they'd met. Mom was married to my stepdad even then. Eli worked at the hospital where she volunteered. It started as an affair. When she got pregnant, she panicked. My stepdad found out but didn't leave her. Instead, he made a deal. He said he'd raise you, Eli wrote, if I disappeared. He'd agreed, thinking it would keep her from losing everything. But when he tried to see me later, they told him I'd died. The more I learned, the less real my childhood felt. Every memory started to twist. The car accident story she used to tell about a lost cousin. The hospital visits that didn't make sense. The times I was left alone for hours while she said she had errands. All of it started fitting into something much darker. Then things at home got weird. Mom started hovering. She'd come into my room unannounced. She'd ask where my phone was. Once, she said, "You're acting sneaky lately. Anything you want to tell me?" My stepdad kept drinking earlier in the day. My sister whispered behind doors. I knew they could feel something shifting, they just didn't know what. I was careful. I deleted my emails every night, cleared the cache, backed up screenshots on a flash drive I kept hidden inside an old shampoo bottle. But one night when I came home from school, my laptop was open on my desk. The email window was up. My draft folder was empty. Mom was in the doorway. "Who's Eli?" she asked. I froze. She didn't yell. She didn't throw anything. She just looked at me like she was studying an insect. "You've been busy," she said, "digging up ghosts." I tried to play dumb, but she didn't buy it. She stepped closer. "You don't know what kind of man that is," she said quietly. "He ruined my life once. He'll ruin yours too." I wanted to scream that she ruined mine. That night, I texted Eli from a pay phone near the gas station. He told me to meet him in Portland, said he could show me proof. Proof of everything. But the next morning, before I could leave, my stepdad's car was parked sideways across the driveway. He was drunk, eyes bloodshot, saying, "You're not going anywhere, kid." When I turned to go back inside, Mom was standing on the porch, holding something in her hand. My phone, and then she smiled the same way she did the night of the game. "Eli won't be bothering you anymore," she said. "He's finally learned his place." But 2 hours later, I got an email from Eli. A single line. "If anything happens to me, it's her." The next day, Eli stopped replying. At first, I thought maybe he was just being careful again, maybe he'd gone quiet to protect us both. But by the second day, my gut started screaming. Something was wrong. Then came the news alert. It was a small local article from Portland. "Man injured in hit and run outside his apartment building. Suspect vehicle not yet identified." The photo was blurry, but I knew that coat. The brown one he always wore in the pictures he'd sent me. Eli. He was in the hospital in critical condition. No family listed. No visitors allowed. And that's when I remembered Mom's exact words. "He's finally learned his place." I couldn't breathe. I went to confront her, shaking, phone in hand. She was at the kitchen table sipping coffee like it was any other morning. "Did you do something to him?" I asked. She didn't even flinch. "You have no idea what that man's capable of," she said. "He's dangerous." "Dangerous? He's in a hospital," her voice dropped. "Because he wouldn't stop. He wouldn't stop ruining my life." I just stared at her. "You tried to kill him." She laughed quietly, like I was being ridiculous. "Sweetheart, do you really think I'd risk prison over someone like him?" But there was a flicker in her eyes, guilt or fear, I couldn't tell. That night, I couldn't sleep. I waited until everyone was passed out, then took my hidden flash drive and the few photos I had of Eli. I printed the article and stuffed it all into my backpack. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew I couldn't stay there. Then, at 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A man's voice, weak but alive. "You have to get out of that house." It was Eli. He said he'd been run off the road. A car had followed him from work. He'd only survived because a neighbor called 911 before the car came back around. "I saw her, kid," he whispered. "She was the one driving." Everything went still. My breath, my heartbeat gone. "Your mother," he said again. "She tried to finish it this time." He told me she'd done it before years ago when I was a baby. That there'd been an accident at home, one that almost killed me. A fall down the stairs that didn't match the injuries. He said he suspected she'd hurt me on purpose to get rid of the last thing that tied her to him. My stomach turned. All my clumsy moments as a kid, the burns, the bruises, the broken wrist, they flashed through my head like film reels. They weren't accidents. Before we hung up, Eli said one last thing. "If she thinks I'm dead, don't tell her otherwise. Let her believe it. That's how we win." I agreed. And that night I started planning. But I didn't know she was already planning too. Because 2 days later, a letter arrived in the mail, addressed to me in Eli's handwriting. Except it wasn't from him. The envelope was off from the start. Eli's handwriting had always been steady, deliberate. This was rushed, shaky. The return address said Portland General Hospital. But when I called to confirm, they said no one by that name was a patient anymore. The letter inside said only 3 words. "She found me." I sat on my bed for what felt like hours, the paper shaking in my hands. I didn't know if it was real. I didn't even know if he'd written it before or after he called me. But one thing was certain, if Mom knew I was still in contact with him, she wouldn't just stop with him. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I broke into her office. It wasn't really an office, more like a locked storage room she kept important documents in. I waited until she and my stepdad passed out, then picked the tiny lock with a bobby pin. I'd watched enough YouTube videos to know how. Inside, the air smelled like dust and bleach. Filing cabinets, stacks of old bills, and a small metal box with a latch. I took the box, shut the door behind me, and opened it in my room under a flashlight. Inside were things I wasn't supposed to see. Copies of medical records. Mine, ones that listed fall injuries and accidental burns. But the doctor's notes didn't match what Mom had always told me. They said suspected neglect, possible abuse. Then there was a photo. A hospital crib with a tag that had my name on it. In the corner, a woman's shadow. Mom's. And underneath that photo, another paper. A check stub from the state's Dependent Care Compensation Program. Thousands of dollars in payments, all in her name. I realized then that they hadn't taken me in out of guilt. They'd literally been paid to keep me. I sat there shaking, staring at all of it. It wasn't love. It was a business deal. That's when the revenge started forming, slow, methodical, like something building in the dark part of my chest. I wasn't going to scream at her. I wasn't going to run away again. Not yet. I was going to make her feel exposed, stripped down the way she'd made me feel that night at the table. I copied everything, the documents, the payments, even old photos that tied her to the hospital where Eli worked. I scanned them at school, saved them to a new email address I made under a fake name. Then I started sending pieces of it to people. First, the county welfare office. Then the hospital HR department. Then one of her coworkers, the one she always bragged about playing poker with on Fridays. I sent the files anonymously with a short message. "You should know who you're sitting next to." Every day, I dropped another breadcrumb. Quietly. Patiently. Then I called Eli's neighbor from the hospital report and pretended to be a journalist. He told me something the police hadn't released. A woman had come to Eli's apartment building 2 days before the accident, asking which unit was his. Brown hair, mid-40s, driving a silver SUV. Mom's car. I started documenting everything, timestamps, photos, even voice recordings when she got angry. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was evidence. Because if she'd really tried to kill him twice, I needed proof. And if she thought she could keep pretending, smiling, cooking dinner, calling herself Mom, then she was about to learn what it felt like to have someone pull the ground out from under her. But before I could send the final file, the one that would expose her completely, something unexpected happened. I got an email from Eli's address. Except this time, the message didn't sound like him at all. The email came at 11:46 p.m., right when I was about to send my final evidence drop to the state investigator. Subject line: Stop! The body of the email was only a few sentences. You don't understand what you're dealing with. She's not the one who tried to kill me. Don't send anything yet. We need to talk. It was signed E. At first, I wanted to believe it, but something felt wrong. Eli's tone was always calm, protective. This was clipped, nervous, almost defensive. I tried to call the number he'd used before. Disconnected. I replied anyway, asking where he was. The message bounced back. The next day, Mom seemed different. Not scared, not smug, just oddly relaxed. She was making breakfast, humming like nothing had happened. My stepdad was gone, business trip, she said, but he'd left his car in the driveway. When I looked at her phone later that morning, she always left it face down but unlocked when she showered. I found a new message thread labeled E, and my blood ran cold. Because it wasn't Eli texting her. It was her texting him. The timestamps matched my Eli emails, every one of them. She'd been writing to me from his address, the voice on the phone, the warnings. The new stop email. It wasn't him, it was her. She'd hacked into his account after the hit and run, maybe even before, pretending to be him to control what I knew. That meant one of two things. Either Eli was too injured to stop her, or he was already dead. My body went numb. I scrolled through more of her texts. There were messages to someone named J, short, coded phrases like, handled the hospital. Car's gone. We need to talk about the money. Money. That word set off alarms in my head. I went back to the files I'd copied, the payments, the benefits. They'd stopped 5 years ago, around the same time my stepdad lost his job. He wasn't unemployed. He'd been blackmailing Eli. That's what the deal really was. Mom hadn't just taken me in for the money. She and my stepdad had been bleeding Eli dry for years, threatening to reveal his affair unless he kept paying. When the payments stopped, they decided to erase him altogether. And I was the loose end. My stomach dropped as I realized the truth. It wasn't just Mom. My stepdad was the one who hit Eli. He was the one behind it all, the one who'd promised her safety, handled the details, made sure she could keep pretending to be innocent. She hadn't protected me out of guilt. She'd protected him out of fear. I didn't cry this time. I just sat there calm, almost cold. The kind of calm you feel right before a storm breaks. Because now I knew who the real enemy was, and I wasn't going to run anymore. I was going to end it. For Eli, for me. But I'd have to make it look like justice, not revenge. I used to think they were just cruel. Shallow, heartless people who hated me for existing. But when I found the folder marked taxes/2010-2015 buried at the bottom of Mom's locked drawer, I finally understood they weren't just cruel. They were calculated. Inside the folder were printouts of old emails between my stepdad and a lawyer. Not Eli's lawyer, his. There were spreadsheets, account numbers, even scanned checks. And one PDF titled Affidavit of Dependency and State Compensation Claim. It listed me. My name, birth date, and a box labeled Special Circumstance. Permanent custodial support. I wasn't just some adopted kid they took in for pity. I was proof. Proof that Mom and my stepdad were still together, raising a dependent child from a previous relationship, so they could keep claiming thousands in tax breaks, health benefits, and childcare assistance. For over a decade, they'd used me like a line item, and it got darker. There were photos of Eli, too, taken from a distance. Parking lots, hospital entrances, even one where he was sitting on a park bench. The metadata said the photos were taken by Jay Sandler, my stepdad. He'd been stalking Eli for years, making sure he stayed quiet, sending threats whenever Eli tried to contact me. The final piece was an email chain between them, Mom and my stepdad, sent a few months before the game night. It said, from Jay Sandler to L. Sandler subject. Ray, the boy, he's starting to ask questions. You need to get him under control before he goes digging again. If Eli comes back around, we'll handle it the same way we did last time. The same way. That meant the accident Eli talked about when I was a baby wasn't paranoia. They'd already tried to end him once before. And the way Mom had acted that night, laughing, smirking, showing no fear, it wasn't guilt. It was power. She'd been carrying this secret for years and thought no one would ever touch her for it. The part that broke me wasn't even that they'd used me for money. It was how ordinary it all was to them. Like ruining lives, lying on legal documents, and framing someone as a stalker was just part of keeping up appearances. When I pieced everything together, I finally saw them for what they were: not parents, not partners, but con artists who had built their entire world around a lie. They didn't love me. They never did. They needed me alive just long enough to collect on me. And when that ended, when the money ran out, when I started asking questions, when Eli got close, they decided to clean house. That's why my stepdad followed Eli that night. That's why Mom kept the fake death certificate. That's why she smirked when she said, "Guess the truth's out." Because to them, I was never a person. I was evidence of a crime they almost got away with. But that same evidence was going to destroy them. Because I had everything: the documents, the proof, the recordings, and I was about to use all of it. I didn't sleep for 2 nights straight. I didn't need to. I was running on the kind of energy that only comes from finally knowing the truth, the kind that burns like electricity under your skin. By Monday morning, I had everything ready. The files, the photos, the recordings. I compiled them all into a single folder titled Dependency Fraud and Attempted Homicide Evidence. Then I sent it to 3 places: the Oregon Department of Human Services, the same office that issued those care payments; the Portland Police Tip Line, the local news outlet that ran the hit-and-run story. And for good measure, I CC'd both of them, my mom and stepdad, using an anonymous email address. I didn't write anything poetic. Just 3 words: check your inbox. I was at school when it hit the fan. My phone buzzed nonstop: calls from home, from numbers I didn't recognize, even from my sister, who suddenly wanted to talk. By lunchtime, the news had already broken. Local couple under investigation for long-term state benefit fraud and possible connection to hit and run. Their mugshots showed up on my feed 2 hours later. My mom looked stunned. My stepdad looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. The police had searched the house, found the files, the photos, even fragments of paint from his car that matched Eli's accident. Eli, by some miracle, was alive. Barely. The doctors said he might walk again, but it would take time. When I visited him in Portland under police supervision, he looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. "I thought I lost you again," he whispered. "You didn't," I told him. "They did," he cried then. Not loud, not broken, just quiet tears that felt like both of us were finally breathing for the first time. The case dragged on for months. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. Every charge stacked higher until there was no escaping it. My mom took a plea deal, my stepdad didn't. He wanted to fight it. He lost. They'll both be in prison for a long time. When I testified, I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I just told the truth, every lie they'd told, every bruise, every dollar. When it was over, I walked out of that courtroom and didn't look back. Now I live with Eli. It's quiet here, different quiet. The kind that doesn't hide anything. We talk sometimes about what could have been, but mostly we just try to start new things. Small things. Real things. Sometimes I still hear my mom's voice in my head, that cruel laugh, that line from the game night. "Guess the truth's out." Yeah, it is. And it destroyed her. Because she spent her whole life keeping a secret that I used to hate myself for, but in the end, it became the very thing that saved me. I was never unwanted, just misplaced. Now I know where I belong, and I sleep just fine.